Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, the Palestinian Authority still going ahead with its pay-to-slay program, which gives terrorists rewards for killing Jewish people. And Turkey still pushing for a role in the international peacekeeping force in Gaza over the objections of Israel, the U.S., and some Muslim nations. And a disturbing new report about the latest hostage remains returned to Israel. Here at home, as the government shutdown continues, millions of Americans are concerned they could lose their federal food assistance. A powerful spiritual movement in South Korea, as a church's tradition of early morning prayer is drawing tens of thousands of people. And as many Christians suffer from depression and anxiety, one author tells CBN News how biblical wisdom, working with modern neuroscience, provides the keys to peace. All those stories and more right now on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Tuesday, the 28th of October, 2025. Going to begin this half hour in Israel, where a new report says the Palestinian Authority is quietly keeping up its pay-to-slay program, which rewards terrorists for murdering Jewish people. And Hamas returns another hostage's body to Israel, but tests reveal the remains belong to a hostage body which had already been returned and buried. Joshua Swanson brings us the story now. He's reporting from Jerusalem.
Israel had hoped for the return of another hostage's body. However, the Health Ministry's National Center of Forensic Medicine determined that the body is not one of the 13 who remain in Gaza, but additional remains of a hostage that's already been returned. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this constitutes a clear violation of the agreement by the terrorist organization Hamas. It's now been a week since Hamas last turned over a hostage. Netanyahu will convene a meeting today to discuss Israel's response. Meanwhile, there's evidence that the Palestinian Authority, despite promises to reform, continues its pay-to-slay policy of paying terrorists who attacked Israel. Itamar Marcus from the watchdog group Palestinian Media Watch confirmed this. Payments proceeded as usual, and recipients confirmed receiving half their monthly stipends. This comes months after European leaders praised what they believed were reforms and pledged more than $230 million in new funding to the PA. Back in September, Netanyahu told Fox News that he did not expect the Palestinian Authority to change.
Pay for slay, they pay terrorists to murder Jews, and the more Jews they murder, the more the pay. If all of that is turned on its head, there's a tremendous transformation, well, good luck. Some people will believe it happens. I don't think it's going to happen.
Turkey's President Erdogan continues his push for a role in Gaza under a proposed international stabilization force. But Israeli leaders say no way, citing Erdogan's open defense of Hamas and his support for its leaders.
Erdogan led hostile approach against Israel. So it is not reasonable for us to let their armed forces enter to Gaza Strip.
Speaking from Air Force One, with President Trump at his side, Secretary of State Marco Rubio showed continued solidarity with Israel.
Look, Israel didn't surrender its right to self-defense. Obviously, the ceasefire is based on obligations on both sides.
Even Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE oppose Erdogan's plan, fearing it would empower instead of disarm Hamas. In Qatar, there are revelations that the government's main spokesman has applauded past Palestinian terror attacks against Israel. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Going to continue our coverage now with CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell. He's joining us. So, Chris, what exactly is this Palestinian pay-to-slay program?
Well, Ephraim, it simply means what it says. They pay terrorists after they kill or maim, wound Israelis. This practice has been going on for decades in the Palestinian Authority. Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, says it's a sacred duty. In fact, he's even made a statement one time, if they had one last cent, they would use it to pay not only the terrorists, that if they get incarcerated, but also their families. And we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. Many times they have tried to say they've stopped the payment plan, but often what they do is they, donations can be fungible, and they will take money from one program to use it to fund the pay to slay program. So this is something the Palestinian Authority is committed to for many decades.
What's the significance of this report? The Palestinian Authority is keeping up this program.
Well, because they desperately want to be part of a post-war Gaza in the Gaza Strip, and if they're exposed about this program, this is something that Israel does not want the Palestinian Authority to be part of a post-war Gaza. But the idea is that if the PA reforms, then they could play a role. But this exposes the fact that they really haven't changed much at all. Finance Minister Smotrich says in retaliation that what they should do is rearrest many of the Palestinian prisoners that have been released to Judea and Samaria. So it will be a very, very hard thing for the PA, the Palestinian Authority, to be part of a post-war Gaza if they're not changing. And the scripture that comes to mind for many, can a leopard change its spots? And according to Prime Minister Netanyahu and other ministers in the Israeli government, they're not able to do that.
Turkey is still pushing for a role in a peacekeeping force in Gaza. What more can you tell us about this and why it's controversial?
Well, it's controversial because Turkey has been very anti-Israel in its rhetoric, especially President Erdogan, anti-Semitic even. And so Israel and many of these Sunni moderate nations like the UAE don't want Turkey to play a role in post-war Gaza, particularly as we have reported before. They are very sympathetic. They're part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they have been helping Hamas leaders for years. They've been housing them sometimes in Turkey itself. They're allied closely with Qatar as well, another Muslim Brotherhood company. So this is something that Israel does not want to tolerate, that they would have both Turkey and or Qatar as part of a post-war Gaza. That would be a very dangerous step towards to have Turkish soldiers on the border of Gaza. And I don't think Israel is going to tolerate that kind of influence that Turkey and its military, which has been very aggressive in places like Syria as well, would want them on the border with southern Israel.
What are we learning about the return of the hostage remains from Hamas?
Well, it wasn't, a hostage that was agreed to. One of the 13 that are still remaining. It was the remains that had been uncovered during the 2-year war. Many people believe this is just a cynical psychological warfare that Hamas is waging. And even there was a report. You've seen some of the excavation machines that have been digging, and what apparently has happened is that Hamas took a body, put it into one of these holes that had been dug, covered it up with dirt, and then said, well, we've recovered one of the bodies. They believe it's just a cynical ruse by Hamas, and that Israel believes that they know where most of these bodies are located, at least 8 or 9 of the 13. And they believe Hamas is just playing these cynical psychological games against Israel right now.
All right, what's ahead for us today on Jerusalem Dateline, Chris?
Well, in Jerusalem Dateline, we have an interview we've done with Hillel Neuer. He talks about UNRWA. He's a lawyer with UN Watch, where they monitor the United Nations and its many organizations, especially UNRWA, and he covers the backstory of that. We also have an interview with Pastor Jim Scudder talking about replacement theology. We also have a episode with Arts a Box, and something we've done over the years. This is a gift box that comes out 4 times a year, and the theme of this particular box right now is called Hope, especially after 2 years of the struggle with Hamas, and also the release of the 20 hostages. So that's many of the stories we have on today's Jerusalem Dateline.
All right, look forward to that. Thank you so much. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, we always appreciate your insight and look forward to hearing from you more in this busy week ahead. I want to remind you at home you can get the latest from Jerusalem Dateline by tuning in at 8 Eastern to the CBN News channel. You can also watch it on the CBN News app, and it's available on YouTube as well. Here at home, the government shutdown, now in its 5th week, is prompting warnings about a hunger crisis. A crucial federal program is running out of money. And as Wendy Griffith reports, food banks are struggling to fill the void.
The second longest government shutdown in U.S. history has millions of Americans worried about how they're going to feed their families. Senators returned to Capitol Hill Monday, but so far, no signs of a truce. Funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, is set to run dry on Saturday, cutting off food assistance for some 42 million Americans enrolled in the program. That's more than 12% of the U.S. population. As the deadline approaches, food pantries like this one in Indianapolis are seeing a surge in demand.
We usually serve between 45 and 50 households, which is about 200 people. Today we are at number 76, and we are still receiving people.
There's no reason why the strongest country in the world, as we claim, is letting their people starve.
The Department of Agriculture, which oversees SNAP, appeared willing to use emergency funds as a short-term solution, but then backtracked, saying Congress would have to take action.
There has to be a pre-existing appropriation for the contingency fund to be used.
Among those stepping in to help is Operation Blessing's Hunger Strike Force.
We're ramping up to respond to this and putting meal kits together, and every dollar donated to Operation Blessing is something we're able to exponentially multiply because of the network of food manufacturers and partners that we have across the United States.
Edson says people can help by giving to their local food banks.
In your local communities, you can work directly with food pantries. So if you are a home gardener and you have an excess of fruits or vegetables, please take those to your local food pantry. If you have backyard chickens that have more eggs than you know what to do with, please take those to your local food pantries. Volunteering is a big thing because a lot of these places are going to be overwhelmed with need, and they're going to need more people to help console, comfort, and serve these families. So volunteering is another great avenue to do that.
Unless a political resolution is found in just a few days, millions of Americans could go hungry. Virginia's Governor Glenn Youngkin has declared a state of emergency, saying he will use funds from a state surplus to keep SNAP funded in Virginia. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Up next, a powerful spiritual movement in South Korea as thousands are praying before the sun comes up. We're going to bring you a look at how tens of thousands are taking part. We've got the story for you when we come back right here on CBN NewsWatch. In Seoul, South Korea, thousands rise before dawn to seek God in fervent prayer. A church's early morning prayer tradition is drawing tens of thousands of people, young and old alike. CBN Asia correspondent Lucille Toulousan takes us inside this powerful spiritual movement.
Lord, 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 followed by a chorus of prayers, is the cry of thousands inside the Myeongsang Presbyterian Church.
It's 5:20 in the morning here in Seoul, and despite the rain, these people are rushing to join the early morning prayer here at the Myeongsang Church. And this has not only been a church tradition, but a family tradition.
Since I was a child, I experienced the grace and the blessings from the early morning prayer. He answered my prayers, especially blessing me with good health. And this is why I bring my children, so they too will make it part of their life.
I was 4 years old when I first joined the early morning service. It was hard to wake up, but I am happy because God answers my prayers. The most recent is I prayed for the summer camp in the U.S., and God answered my prayer.
Dawn prayer meetings have been a meaningful part of Korean Christian life, dating back over 140 years. As urbanization swept the country, however, the tradition began to fade. Reverend Samwon Kim, founder of Myeongsang Church, helped bring it back, launching week-long early morning prayer festivals. Soon, churches across the country followed, holding similar events to revive and carry on this powerful spiritual tradition.
There is a golden time when it comes to prayer, and it is in the early morning. Jericho, Exodus, the resurrection, all of this happened in the early mornings. Early morning is when the darkness is cast away and the resurrection happens. I believe many problems of the world can be solved through early morning prayer.
Reverend Kim's son, Pastor Hannah Kim, now leads the church. He recalls coming to love early morning prayer, modeled faithfully by his parents. He believes this practice helped the church to grow from just 25 members in 1980 to more than 100,000 today. One major answer to prayer is the Somang Correctional Institution, a Christian prison founded with the help of Reverend Kim and government partners. It's one of Asia's finest, helping transform inmates through the gospel. Pastor Kim believes the church cannot be complacent and should pray even more with the challenges facing the country today.
We don't have war at our hand, but we have a threat right next to us. From North Korea. Our economy is not growing because our population is not growing.
His goal is to make early morning prayer a lifestyle.
Let's give up our comfort zone and just continue our fervent heart for Christ and for the prayers.
Lucille Telusan, CBN News, Seoul.
Still ahead, even as many Christians suffer from depression, an author explains how biblical wisdom working with modern neuroscience can provide peace. We're going to have that story for you. It's coming up right after this. Many Christians suffer from mental health issues like anxiety and depression, as well as physical ailments. On this week's episode of Healthy Living, on CBN News Channel, author Justin Earley discusses his new book, The Body Teaches the Soul, showing how biblical wisdom combined with modern neuroscience provide the keys to peace.
I wrote this book out of personal experience and really personal failure. So part of my story, Lori, is that I was a former missionary to China, turned corporate lawyer, and I still practice law today. But in that transition, as I moved from the lifestyle of being a missionary to the lifestyle of being a lawyer, I collapsed into terrible mental unhealth. So early in my law career, I had really severe panic attacks and insomnia, even at some points, suicidal thoughts. And I was trying to figure out, I was wrestling in this stage of my life with how is it that my head can be over here, and yet while my habits are over here, and my heart seems to be following the habits. And it was a time in my life where the Lord taught me that if your head goes one way and your habits go the other, your heart tends to follow the habits. And I really wrestled with the physical side of that. I really wrestled with, why does it seem to make such a difference of whether I exercise or how I eat, whether I'm meditating or breathing carefully? Why does it seem to affect my peace? That I thought that was spiritual stuff. And so the process of researching and writing this book, I came to see that God has made us embodied creatures, and thus the habits, the physical habits of our body are all very spiritual, for better or for worse. And so really the last decade of my life has been devoted to practicing spiritual disciplines alongside physical disciplines so that the habit and the head can be united and lead the whole heart towards a life of following Jesus.
The Bible tells us that the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and yet for so many of us, those of us who are believers, our body and our spirit are very separate things.
I think one of the things that I've come to learn in researching and writing this book is that generally the world makes two big mistakes. They either ignore the body and say, you know, really everything important in life is spiritual, and thus all solutions for everything are spiritual. Or they idolize the body and they say, really, the physical is all there is. Really, you're just a bunch of, you know, neurons and brain chemicals. And so every solution to life is medical. And I want to tell you that the Bible does not see life in terms of those extremes. It tells you don't ignore the body. You were made physical by God, but don't idolize the body because you were also made spiritual by God. Instead, image God through the body. This is the paradigm of Genesis, when Genesis 2:7 says that God took dust and breathed the spirit of life into it. There you have physical and spiritual, and a living soul was born. That's the King James translation of Genesis 2:7. And that idea means that everything in our life is always a divine combination of the physical and the spiritual. And we're not going to image God into the life we were made for if we're ignoring or idolizing one. So with mental health, for example, Christians should be the first to agree with psychiatry and say that you need correct top-down thinking. You need to order your mind. And Christians are usually really big on this, right? Get the truth in there. It is absolutely essential to a healthy brain. But we should also be saying you need to order your physical life, because if you think and know all the right things, but are dishonoring God in your body, you will unsurprisingly end up with a life that is racked by depression or anxiety, not because you don't know the truth, but because you don't put it into practice. And this is the biblical story, the worldview over time, that was not just about knowing God. It's about following him and loving him in a physical life. So I really want to, in The Body Teaches the Soul, combine these things for people and say, that's the good life you were made for.
And you can learn more about the book, The Body Teaches the Soul, by checking out this week's edition of Healthy Living. You can find it today on the CBN News Channel at 2:30 and 8:30 Eastern. You can also see it on the CBN News app, and you can find it on YouTube as well. Stay with us. We're coming back with an encouraging word for your Tuesday. We'll be right back. Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. This is a message I pray blesses you, and if it does, I encourage you to bless others by posting, tagging, tweeting, and sharing it with those in your circles of influence. This is just a gentle reminder. God has not forgotten. If he said it, he will do it, and I promise you it will come to pass. That dream, that vision, that word that God spoke to you, well, it may have been days ago, months ago, years ago. If God said it, guess what? It is still indeed true. Don't quit. Don't give up. God said it. It will come to pass. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online. That address is cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And, of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. We'll see you back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless. Thank you so much for watching.